Hello and a warm welcome back to the channel. Today we're finally going to be doing a little bit of maintenance work on my 1986 Vauxhall Cavalier. Just a very basic video today. We're just going to be replacing the brake fluid. So make yourself a nice cup of tea and enjoy the video. First things first, remove the wheel trim and we'll get our lug nuts undone. It'll help if I've got the right sized socket. These are 19mm for those playing along at home. Really this procedure can be done on any car. This is a non-ABS model. If you're interested, I'll do an ABS model. I've got my Mark III Cavalier that I need to do. As you may well know, brake fluid needs to be changed every 3 years. This is because it's hydroscopic, which means it can absorb water. You don't want that in your brake system, because if it's in the pipe near your caliper, obviously that water will then start to boil as you use your brakes and the brakes heat up. Which then creates a vapour gap as the water turns to steam, and it will give you a spongy pedal. You can usually tell how the quality of brake fluid. It usually goes a dark sort of blacky colour, old brake fluid, and as well as new, especially .4 brake fluid is pretty very clear. So yeah, let's get the car jacked up and we'll start on this front wheel here. Okay, so that's the wheel off. So I'm going to try and do this with the most basic of tools, just so it's easy for you guys to follow. Ignore those, that always happens. So yeah, you might think that the lug nuts looked a bit loose when I took the wheel off. These are only actually torqued up to 90Nm, so really quite loose, especially when you compare it to modern cars. Modern cars is about 140Nm. Anyway, so what you're going to need for this job, obviously the correct sized socket for your wheel bolts. I believe these are 11mm, so I use a deep socket. You can usually get away with a short socket. I've also got a flared spanner as well. That can not really necessary for this. Also got a standard box spanner for the just to assist us with undoing the bleed nipple there. So I'm actually going to use this container here. This is actually a vacuum bleeder, which I might show later on. This in use. It's not absolutely fantastic, and to be honest with you, I prefer to use the method of using the brake pedal just to pump the fluid through. The most important part of this though is that it has got a pipe with a half decent sort of fitting on the end, and all you really need is a half decent length of pipe that fits over your nipple So you got enough to allow it to go up in the air like that, and then down into a container. So you know, a couple of foot length, that's all you'd really need. So yeah, let's have a look at the nipple on this one. So as you can see here, this is our brake bleed nipple. It's got a little rubber dust cap on there. Now let's see if I'm right in these being an 11mm. No, I'm not. No, it looks more like a 10 or even an 8. Yeah, it's about. No, that's might be a 9 actually. Let me go and get the correct size spanner. Sure enough, these are a 9mm. So what I'm going to do is use my deep socket here to just break off the nipple. It's better to use something like this. They can be notoriously tight sometimes, especially if someone else has been here and and over tightened it, or if it's you know, not been undone for a long time. They can be a bit of a pain. So that's that loosened off now. It weren't too tight, thankfully. So as I said earlier, I'm just going to route my pipe so it on purposely stays up in the air like so. Fit that on there. This is going to just encourage the air to come up the pipe, and near the top there, it just air always tries to rise to the top. So we'll undo this. Right, and before we go any further, it's important that I say that you've got to have brake fluid on hand, of course, and keep it topped up. But I'm actually going to use another tool to assist. It's not actually needed, but believe me, it's well worth the money. I mean, this whole kit actually cost me £14, and that's for this vacuum bleeder and this as well. So let me bring you out of there and I'll show you what the setup's going to be. So as I said in the last segment there, this isn't really needed for you know, as part of your tool set, but it does make your life a hell of a lot easier. So this is just a simple bottle that you put your brake fluid in. I'll throw it about as a train goes past, and all it really is just a 1/4 inch valve with a threaded barb on the end. So you will fill this up with fluid. It comes with these different adapters. Now what you do with these adapters is you actually screw them on the end here. That's the wrong way round, and I'll throw that on the floor. Okay, so that's reacquired. So the idea of this is that you screw that into there. You may need to just open up your valve, or not, as the case may be. And the idea of this is that when you take your So yeah, as I was saying before, so you'll undo your brake fluid reservoir. Just get all the fluid out and put this over to one side. I'm going to hang mine. Actually, I might disconnect it. Mine's just got simple spade terminals, but yours may have a little clip if it's a more modern car. That's a little bit tight actually, might have to put some dielectric grease on those. Yeah, just a tiny little bit of corrosion there, nothing. Don't lose your seal either. Right, these have a little gap in this one. This is like a little float switch, so when your brake fluid goes below a certain level, it brings the brake warning light on. empty that out of there. Good. Wrap that up in some tissue and put it somewhere safe. So yeah, you find the correct size bit of plastic that will sit in your master cylinder reservoir like that. That seems to sit quite nicely. It's sitting against the rubber a little bit, but that'd be okay. That'd be perfect. Now let's fill this up with some brake fluid. Right, I'm going to fill that up most of the way. Shouldn't use too much fluid, this being a non-ABS car. Screw that on there. Make sure you've got no leaks. And what you do is you simply insert this into reservoir like so. Get it so it sits nicely, and then this is the annoying thing. This is the wrong way round in my opinion, but you turn it on like so, and then that will drain the fluid out into the reservoir there. And as soon as it gets to a certain level, when it meets the outlet of the bottle, it will just hold the fluid back, and then as you pump the fluid through the system, it will just keep maintain the level in here whilst you've got fluid in the little bottle here. So you don't need that bottle that I've set up on the reservoir up there. It's only really there to help me, and it is well worth the money because you haven't got to worry about keeping the master cylinder reservoir topped up, because you soon go through it. You pretty much every caliper that you come to, you put some more in there, or at least I try to anyway. But as you can see, while I had that open, that had actually started to gravity bleed, which is good. That's another way you can actually change this, and you can leave that to run like that, and just allow it to gravity bleed as such. You can see that it's quite clear. I've done this, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago, I think. As I say, this car doesn't see a lot of use, just sort of like a summer run around really. But yeah, the reason why I'm starting on the driver's side front is because this is actually closest to the master cylinder. If you're doing an ABS car, you would do like your nearest exit point. So you could have the master cylinder on this side of the car, on the driver's side, but your ABS unit could be on the passenger side of the car. So that's obviously going to be your nearest exit, because all the piping will go over towards the ABS system and then come out to probably your passenger wheel, which would be the closest one. Unless if it's some kind of sporty exotic car where it could be in the back, and then of course you'll do one of your back wheels there. So yeah, we've got that opened up now, and you can see that's, you probably won't be able to see, but that's actually starting to come through still. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start pumping the brake pedal. It'll probably take about 6 or 7 pushes, and you should see this hopefully change colour and run a little bit clearer. So that was 10 pushes on the brake pedal there. I don't know if you can see the colour difference between those. There isn't a massive amount actually. I might have pumped a little bit more through than I thought there. 10 pushes is probably a bit excessive, to be fair, but you can see that's filled that pipe up, and we've got a little bit of fluid in the little reservoir there. Vauxhalls can be a little bit notorious for or difficult to get an airlock out of the system. So when you've if you're bleeding the system and the brake pedal feels a little bit spongy, a little trick that I was told by an old-timer mechanic is just to sharply push the pedal down as hard as you can, really. It's just to really push out that air. I don't have this problem here because we are just replacing the fluid, but that's always something worth remembering on any car. If you've still got a bit of a spongy pedal, then just give it a sharp push and see if that gets any air out. Any air that may come into the system, it will come out up to here anyway. You could even leave this open and allow it to gravity bleed, and then any small air bubbles that you may have in the system will find their way hopefully out the top. But it doesn't always happen because you've got little bends and things that you're always going to have another highest point. You can see there's a little air bubble coming up just there now. So I've just tightened up my bleed nipple there, and I'm just going to press on the brake pedal and make sure I've got a nice firm pedal, and obviously make sure we've got no leaks around here. And that's the pedal nice and firm. So now we're going to go into the opposite direction and go over and do the passenger side rear, because I believe I know on this system you usually get a pair that work together. So for instance, you'll have on some cars, I believe it's the fronts work as a pair and the rears work as a pair. The brake master cylinder is actually made up of two pumps that's built into one. So if one of the pair fails, you've still got some form of braking. It would be quite poor, but you'll have some braking there. Usually it's opposites, so driver side front in this case, which also is paired up with passenger side rear. As I say, some cars is both the fronts and both the rears, so if you lose a pair on there, it'll either be just the fronts or just the rears. It's just all about helping you, trying to maintain the position of the car as you're braking if it ever does fail. So let's move over to the back. So we've now moved to the back, and as you can see, this is rear drums on this car. It's pretty much the same as doing your standard caliper. It's just a cylinder in the back here. Procedure's exactly the same. So yeah, you've got no issues there. And just to be even more awkward, these are smaller than a 9. This feels like a 7 or an 8. They are indeed an 8mm on this end. So as I said, same as before really, crack it off with your 12-sided socket. We do them up like this as well, when we're finished, just to make sure they're at the right torque. So that's loosened off now, and again we'll find somewhere where we can poke our thing through. It's a little bit more difficult on this side. We might just have to hold it up against here. Let's see if that'll help us. Yeah, that's good enough. Got a good enough loop on there. Just as long as it's higher than the cylinder itself, I'm happy. So again, just undo this. Just the same as the fronts, really. Don't get any gravity brake bleeding. No. Right. I'm going to give this a few presses now, and I'm going to continue as I did before, and wait until the clear fluid comes through. That was 10 pushes. Looks about the same coming through, so I'll give it another 10. That looks much clearer now. So if you can compare those two there, you can just about see, I don't know if you can see that on there, just about see the very slight coloration difference. So as before, we'll tighten that up. And check for any leaks. So I've got a nice good firm brake pedal there. So all that's left to do now is I'm going to make sure I tighten this up properly. I mean, you don't have to go mad with these, just nip it up. I just usually grab the end of the head there. I don't go pulling on the handle there. It's a good way of keeping you, make sure you don't apply too much torque. So as again before, give it a spray down, just to clean any fluid you may have spilt. And the one thing I really like to do is make sure you give the brake pedal a good hard shove, just to double check for any leaks. So as I alluded to earlier, this is actually a vacuum brake bleeder, so you hook it up to your air compressor there, and it uses a Venturi effect with the air passing through to actually suck your brake fluid through the system. It's very inefficient. It uses a hell of a lot of air, so it's only really worth it for a decent sized compressor. I've been using this as just an ordinary catch can, which, to be fair, this whole kit with the fluid reservoir that sits on top of your master cylinder there only cost about £14 I think off of eBay, so it's most definitely worth the investment just for using that as an ordinary catch can rather than using the air. So let's see how effective it is. So again, I'm just hooking over my pipe there to allow any potential air to come out of the system. What I might need to do is actually take the bleed nipple out all the way and put some grease around the threads there, and that's purely and utterly to stop any air from being sucked in through the threads, which has the potential to happen. So all I'm going to do is pull this trigger now, and you can see the under gravity the fluid's already coming through, and you can see there's no air in there. So let's see if it introduces air. Now it's going to get a bit noisy. So yeah, as suspected really, it's sucking in a load of air. So let me just go and get some grease, and we'll put some grease around that and see if we can stop that. If not, we'll call this off as a bad idea and just use our brake pedal method. So I got myself a catch can underneath there because it's no doubt we're going to be making a mess. Got some old grease here. This stuff is really quite thick, so we're definitely going to be making a mess absolutely everywhere. So I just unscrew this nipple. You can also bleed your brakes like this if you really get into difficulty, or if the nipple itself becomes blocked up for whatever reason. So just pull that out of there. Let's give it a quick wipe down with some paper towel. As I said, this stuff really is quite thick old grease, so we're just going to give the threads there a good liberal coating. That's probably way too much, so that's just perfect. And we're just going to screw this back into the caliper like so. Right, so we're going to refit our hose like so, and let's see if it pulls air this time. It worked for a little while, but we still got some air come through the threads there, it seems. Let's just try tightening that up a little bit. There we go. Right, give it about a quarter of a turn open there. Let's try again. Now you can see some air bubbles coming through here. The vacuum is that good on this little Venturi device here. It's actually sucking the air past this hose here, but I can't see anything coming from the actual nipple itself at the moment. I wonder if I put a bit of pressure on it. Yeah, now you can see I've just made that worse, but you can actually see, especially here, that it is actually pulling it in, which is actually quite surprising. It's amazing how strong that is. Let's try that again. Now, as you can see, this is a total waste of time. You might as well just use the brake pedal method like I've been doing. So I don't know if you see any of that. Yeah, total waste of time. It does look like that's coming from the outside again. So yeah, let's go back to our brake pedal method. Right then, that's it for this one. Fairly simple job to do. The little brake bleed nipples can be a bit troublesome to undo. This is why I try and keep on top of these things every 3 years or so. I think on modern cars the brake fluid change is every 2 years. It's certainly, believe it is on my Passat. On these it was always every 3 years. Really, it's like an oil change really. If the more often you do it, the better. So yeah, simple job. Excuse the mess of the car. The damn trees really do spit this time of year. There's sap all over them, which is a pain in the backside. I mean, you could clean them and come back to them and they'll be just as bad the next day. So yeah, that's it for this one. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in another video.